So, most of us probably assume that if you want to be, truly eco-friendly at the end of your life, you should probably choose cremation.
Right, yeah.
Like, it just sounds incredibly clean and efficient and, well, modern.
Oh, absolutely. It's the default for a lot of people.
But what if the ultimate green exit isn't this modern industrial process at all? What if it's actually an ancient 3,000-year-old tradition?
That is the big question.
Today, we are jumping into a genuinely fascinating deep dive on a source text called Dignity in the Dust, The Jewish Case for Burial by Rabbi Shlomo Ezagui.
It's an incredible piece of writing.
It really is. And our mission here, just to be clear, isn't just to review the rules of some ancient religious practice. We are going to explore how traditional Jewish burial weaves together theology, hard environmental data, deep human psychology, and history.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground.
It totally flips the script on how you might view your own physical existence. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to really set the stage for what we are looking at in this text, imagine the backdrop behind me shifting right now.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Picture an ancient, weathered parchment scroll slowly dissolving and morphing into a vast, incredibly detailed, starry night sky.
Oh, wow. I love that.
I love that visual too, because that is the true scale we are dealing with today. We're moving from the microscopic, granular details of Jewish law all the way out to the cosmic mechanics of the universe.
Which is exactly why we need to start at the absolute foundation of this entire worldview.
Right.
Because before we can even debate how a human body should be treated when someone passes away, we have to look at how this text answers a much more controversial question.
Who actually owns your body in the first place?
Ada.
And that question triggers a massive clash of perspectives right out of the gate. I mean, the modern assumption, the one almost everyone living today implicitly accepts, is the concept of total bodily autonomy.
Right, like, it is my body, I own it exclusively.
Exactly. And therefore, I have the ultimate right to do whatever I want with it, both in life and in death. But the fundamental theological premise of Judaism, which Rabbi Ezagui meticulously details, well, it aggressively rejects that premise.
Yeah, the source text points straight to the prophet Ezekiel. And Ezekiel states very clearly, quote, "The souls are mine," meaning they belong to God.
Right.
And the rabbinic interpretation extends that concept directly to the physical body as well. The body is not owned by the individual at all. It is merely entrusted to the individual.
What's fascinating here is how that single premise dictates everything that follows.
Yeah.
Jewish legal codes actually rule that burial is a positive commandment. It's not, just a cultural suggestion or a family preference.
Right, it's a requirement.
Exactly. And the reason given is that this commandment reflects the ultimate honor due to the human form simply because it was created in the image of the divine. You do not have absolute ownership of yourself.
Reading through that section of the text, it immediately made me think of a rental car.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, when you rent a car, you don't own it. The agency entrusts it to you for the duration of your trip.
Right. You just have the keys for a bit.
Yeah, you get to drive it, you get to experience the entire world from inside it, but there is a strict binding contract. You can't just decide to, sell it for scrap metal.
Or set it on fire.
Right. You can't intentionally set it on fire in an open field when your road trip is over. You are legally obligated to return it to the lot in good faith, as intact as possible.
That is actually a very precise way to look at it.
Yeah.
And Jewish law takes that return policy incredibly literally.
Really, literally.
The text outlines what it calls the law of return, which is rooted all the way back in the book of Genesis. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return.
Right, a famous line.
The theology states that while the soul returns to its immaterial divine source, the physical body is obligated to return to the exact physical earth from which it was originally formed.
And the execution of that law is where things get really specific. Because traditional Jewish burial doesn't just mean putting a body underground. The goal is literal physical contact with the soil, right?
Absolutely. The legal codes mandate that the process must facilitate that return as naturally as possible.
So no fancy metal boxes.
Exactly. This is why traditional Jewish burials use incredibly simple, unadorned wooden caskets. They're designed to break down.
Wow.
In fact, the tradition often requires drilling holes in the bottom of the wooden casket specifically to ensure that the body eventually makes direct contact with the earth.
That's fascinating.
The absolute goal is a natural return to the soil. Therefore, Anything that violently destroys the body or artificially preserves it to prevent that return is strictly forbidden.
Well, if the physical body is this sacred rental that we are obligated to carefully return to the earth, it makes me wonder what the actual purpose of the vehicle is while we're driving it.
That's a great question.
Because historically, so many cultures view the physical body as a kind of trap.
Yeah, definitely.
You have that ancient Greek philosophy dualism, which argues that the soul is pure and elevated, and the physical body is just this heavy, dirty prison dragging it down.
And we see that dualism everywhere today. It's the classic meat suit trope.
The meat suit. Yeah.
The idea is, I am an ethereal soul, and I just happen to be driving around in a temporary biological meat suit.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. The sources in this text reject the meat suit concept entirely.
Completely.
Judaism doesn't view the body as a prison or even as just a temporary vessel. According to the text, the body and the soul are equal partners.
It's a radical reframing, honestly. The text brings in profound mystical teachings, specifically from the Chassidic work called the Tanya, to explain the mechanics of this partnership.
Right, the Tanya.
Yeah, and the Tanya argues that the soul's entire purpose for being sent down to this physical world can only be fulfilled through its interaction with the physical body.
I want to make sure I'm grasping the mechanics of that. It's not just a rental car, then. It's more like a world-class musician and a Stradivarius violin. Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
The musician, the soul, has the creative genius and the intent, but without the physical violin,
Yeah,
the body, the music can never actually manifest in the real world.
exactly.
You need physical hands to give charity. You need
Yeah.
physical lips to speak a kind word.
That is a perfect analogy. The physical actions you perform, the commandments or mitzvot, are the music. And those actions physically transform the material world into a dwelling place for the divine.
So the body is essential.
Therefore, the body is not incidental to your spiritual life. It is the absolute essential engine of it. The soul needs the body just as much as the body needs the soul.
Which gives so much context to a Talmudic comparison the author brings up. It compares the human body to a worn-out, unusable Torah scroll.
Right.
When a Torah scroll is too old or damaged to be used for reading, you don't just throw it in the trash, and you certainly don't burn it.
Never.
You bury it with profound reverence in a cemetery. Why? Because it housed the divine word. The text says the human body housed a divine soul, so it must be treated with that exact same reverence. And that is the foundation of the obligation called kavod hemet, which means honoring the deceased. You do not discard the partner that did all the heavy lifting during your lifetime.
Wow, yeah.
Destroying the very instrument that realized your divine purpose is considered a severe violation of that partnership.
Okay, I follow the logic of honoring a partner. But the text goes deeper into the Kabbalistic perspective, and I have to admit I struggled with this part a little bit.
It gets pretty complex.
Yeah, the mystical texts argue that cremation actually causes spiritual suffering to the soul. But if the soul leaves the body at the moment of death, how can an immaterial soul possibly feel pain if the physical body is burned?
That's a logical question, right?
Like the soul is already gone, isn't it?
It's a great question, and to understand it, we have to look at how Kabbalah explains the mechanics of life and death. During a person's lifetime, the soul and the body aren't just roommates.
Right.
They become profoundly, inextricably entangled. They fuse together to do the work of living. So when death occurs, that bond doesn't just instantly snap clean.
Oh, so it's not like a light switch turning off.
Exactly. It is a gradual unwinding. The mystical texts explain that natural, slow decomposition in the earth is actually a required spiritual process. It's a rectification, or tikkun, for the soul.
Interesting.
The soul needs time to gently detach from the physical realm. Cremation, however, is a violent, sudden incineration of the physical anchor.
Ouch.
Because the soul is still deeply attuned to the body it inhabited for decades, that sudden destruction causes a kind of spiritual shock, or like phantom pain. It's an unnatural severing of a partnership that was meant to dissolve gently into the earth.
That makes a lot of sense. The natural rotting of the physical matter is the mechanism that allows the immaterial soul to slowly untangle itself.
Yes.
But if Jewish law insists that the body must break down naturally in the earth, what happens when we intercept that process? Because if we look at the raw data in the text regarding how modern society handles death, we are doing everything in our power to fight that natural cycle.
And this is where the ancient theology violently collides with modern environmental reality.
Let's talk about that environmental reality. Because I bet you, listening to this, probably thought cremation was the clean, green option.
Most people do.
You save land, you avoid cemeteries, you just become ashes. But the data presented here is staggering. Cremation isn't a natural return to dust, it's a heavily industrialized emission event.
It is arguably one of the greatest modern myths. To reduce a human body to ashes in a matter of hours, you can't just use a campfire.
Right, obviously.
You require a specialized industrial furnace that reaches temperatures of approximately 1,000 degrees Celsius.
Generating that kind of heat requires burning an astronomical amount of fossil fuels.
It does, and the byproduct of that process is significant carbon emissions pumped directly into the atmosphere. But it's not just carbon.
Oh, no.
When a body is incinerated at that temperature, it vaporizes everything inside it, including heavy metals like mercury from dental fillings, releasing those toxic substances right into the air we breathe.
So cremation is definitely out if you care about your carbon footprint.
100%.
But modern conventional burial in the West isn't exactly natural either. The text details how embalming fundamentally interrupts the law of return.
Embalming is a process designed entirely to artificially freeze time. To do it, blood is drained from the body and replaced with highly toxic chemical fluids, primarily formaldehyde.
Which is awful stuff.
Formaldehyde is a known carcinogen.
Which you absolutely do not want seeping into the groundwater.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And to prevent that seepage, modern conventional cemeteries require the embalmed body to be placed in a metal casket, which is then lowered into a heavily reinforced concrete vault in the ground.
Wow.
You are essentially creating a toxic time capsule. It completely blocks the body from interacting with the soil.
It's the exact opposite of what the Jewish legal codes require. The text points out that in Israel today, traditional burial is practiced in its purest form. They don't even use wooden caskets most of the time.
Right.
They bury the body directly in the earth, wrapped only in simple biodegradable linen shrouds.
The purest, most direct return to the earth possible. No chemicals, no metal, no concrete, no fossil fuels, just natural composting.
When you look at the carbon footprint of a 1,000-degree fossil fuel furnace, or a concrete vault filled with formaldehyde, versus a simple linen shroud placed in the dirt, the ancient religious tradition is actually the ultimate modern green ideal.
It really is.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
It is a profound irony that we spend so much energy today talking about leaving no trace in sustainable living, yet it turns out this ancient framework perfectly executes the most progressive ecological goals.
So, letting the body naturally decompose serves the soul, and it serves the soil. But what about the people standing on top of that soil? I want to pivot from the physical reality of the earth to the psychological reality of the people left behind.
This is where the wisdom of the system really shines, because traditional burial profoundly serves the living. Judaism recognizes that grief is chaotic, so it provides a highly structured psychological framework to manage it. You have the first 7 days of intense mourning, the first 30 days of gradual re-entry into life, and the annual anniversary of the passing.
And the physical grave serves as the anchor for all of that. The text cites the Talmud, which refers to the grave as a makam kabua, a fixed, permanent place.
Because we are physical beings, we need physical geography to process abstract emotions. Having a specific, unchanging location to visit allows mourners to ground their grief. It gives them a place to stand, to reflect, and to speak.
The author makes a really compelling argument against scattering ashes here. When ashes are scattered into the ocean or even kept in an urn that moves from apartment to apartment over the decades, that tangible sense of geography is lost.
It evaporates.
Future generations, grandchildren who never met the person, they lose a physical anchor to their own history. A grave declares to the future, this person lived, they mattered, and they have a permanent place among us.
That's beautifully said.
I completely respect the psychological beauty of that, but I do have to push back here because, practically speaking, funerals are financially devastating. We are talking $10,000, sometimes $20,000 today. Isn't cremation just vastly easier and cheaper for a grieving family?
It's a very common concern.
It feels like this beautiful tradition of a physical grave is a luxury many people just can't afford.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that the tradition anticipated that exact socioeconomic problem thousands of years ago. The perception that cremation is cheaper today is entirely driven by the modern funeral industrial complex, which marks up everything from mahogany caskets to floral arrangements.
Right, the upsell.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with the actual cost of a traditional burial.
So how does the ancient law handle the cost?
It mandates absolute, non-negotiable simplicity. And there is an incredible piece of history behind this. The text describes a massive reform initiated in the first century by a leader named Rabbi Gamliel. At that time, wealthy families were bankrupting themselves to have extravagant funerals with expensive garments and spices. But the poor families couldn't keep up. The pressure was so severe, and the shame of a cheap funeral was so intense that poor families were literally abandoning the bodies of their loved ones in the streets to avoid the public humiliation.
Oh my goodness. That is a horrifying social crisis. How did he start it?
Rabban Gamliel was a man of immense wealth and political prominence, but he left strict orders that when he died, he was to be buried in the absolute cheapest, simplest linen shrouds available. No luxury, no status.
Wow.
By doing that, he instantly shattered the social pressure. From that day forward, Jewish law adopted his standard. Whether you were a billionaire or a pauper, everyone is buried in the exact same inexpensive white linen shrouds in the exact same plain pine box.
He essentially weaponized his own privilege to create the ultimate societal equalizer.
Exactly. Death should never be a luxury expense. And by standardizing the extreme simplicity, he ensured that the psychological need for a permanent anchor wouldn't be priced out of reach for anyone.
That's incredible.
Today, this tradition is maintained by volunteer burial societies in Jewish communities all over the world who ensure that everyone receives that same dignified, simple burial regardless of their bank account.
That historical context is vital. It changes the conversation from paying for a luxury to preserving human dignity. And that concept of preserving dignity takes on a massive, unavoidable emotional weight when we look at the history of the 20th century.
Yes, the text addresses this head-on, and it is a profound point. In the shadow of the Holocaust, the systemic burning of human bodies in crematoria became the ultimate symbol of desecration.
Right.
The industrial goal of the Nazis wasn't merely mass murder, it was the total erasure of existence. Burning the bodies was designed to ensure there was no grave, no memory, and no continuity.
Rabbi Ezagui notes that while the religious laws requiring burial existed for thousands of years before the Holocaust, the emotional resonance of those laws today is completely intertwined with that history. Choosing traditional burial today stands in direct, defiant opposition to historical attempts at erasure.
It is a bold affirmation that the individual existed, that their history matters, and that the community will protect their memory. Which brings us to the ultimate ethical dimension of this entire practice. The text quotes a concept from the Talmud that describes burying the dead as cheesed shel emet.
Which translates to a true kindness, right? Or a kindness of truth.
Yes.
Why is that specific phrase used? What makes burying someone a true kindness compared to, like, helping a friend move or giving to charity?
Because it is the only act of kindness you can ever perform for another human being where, with absolute mathematical certainty that they can never pay you back.
Oh, wow.
When you do a favor for a living person, there's always the subconscious possibility of reciprocity. But when you respectfully prepare a body or burial, there is zero ulterior motive. It is pure, selfless giving to someone who has nothing left to offer you.
So it transforms this process, something modern society treats as an administrative, morbid chore to be handled as quickly as possible, into the highest possible form of empathy.
This raises an important question for any society. How do you measure the true integrity of a culture? You measure it by examining how that culture treats its most utterly vulnerable members. And there's no one more vulnerable than those who have passed on. How a society treats the physical remains of people who can no longer contribute to the economy, who can no longer advocate for themselves, that tells you everything you need to know about their core values.
It really does. Looking back at everything we've covered, what Rabbi Ezagui's text has provided here isn't just a list of archaic funeral rules. It is a brilliant, unified worldview.
Absolutely.
It seamlessly connects Ezekiel's theology of divine ownership, the Kabbalistic mechanics of the soul unwinding from the body, the hard modern environmental data regarding carbon and groundwater, the deep psychological need for a physical place to grieve, and the historical defiance of burying the vulnerable.
It is a comprehensive system that honors the entire spectrum of what it means to be human, from the dirt to the stars.
And to you listening right now, we spend so much of our lives trying to optimize everything. We want the fastest, cheapest, most convenient solutions to every problem we encounter.
We really do.
But unpacking this text reveals a profound, layered wisdom in slowing down, in rejecting the industrialized shortcut, and in doing things the careful, intentional, and natural way.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that beautiful analogy of the musician and the Stradivarius violin.
Okay.
If the physical body truly is a sacred, equal partner to the soul, a divine instrument that actively manifests goodness and transforms the physical world, how might understanding that radically change the way you treat your own body, right now, today, while you are still very much alive?
That is the question to carry with you. Thank you for joining us to unpack this remarkable text. Keep examining your assumptions, take good care of your partner, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.